Hey Sanjay, thanks for joining the podcast on the Gigam CEO podcast. I always like to start with how you became the CEO. You either start by doing all of the jobs, or you do all the jobs and you eventually become the CEO. So thanks for joining, and why don't we start with how you became the CEO here? But I think you've been CEO many places, so looking forward to hearing your story.
Great question, Ben. I think in my case, it was I was doing all the jobs and I became a CEO. It was 1996, so almost 28 years ago, when I became the CEO of my first company, which I co-founded. It was in the computer networking space, and we invented what is known as voice over DSL. It still is deployed in millions and billions of homes, et cetera. And I founded that company, and I was the founder. I was the CEO, and I was basically doing every single job.
Yes, you did all the jobs. Nice, very good. So Sanjay, you've been in networking, you've been in infrastructure. Now you're in AI. Let's talk a little bit about how customers are actually using AI for business benefit. And I think you sit in a unique position because you look at it from an industry or vertical perspective, which I think is always great. Most technologies are horizontal, and then customers have to figure out what to do with it. So why don't you kind of walk us through what you're seeing with customers and what you're excited about at SymphonyAI?
No, absolutely. I think the unique angle that our founder, I'm not the founder of SymphonyAI, Dr. Ramesh Wadhwani founded the company in March of 2017. So we're in our seventh year now. I joined forces with Ramesh as my chairman, and I became the CEO about 2.5+ years ago. And the unique proposition that we are focused on at SymphonyAI is that we're basically we're not trying to go and solve any brand new problems in the enterprises. We're looking at the existing problems that the enterprise verticals are facing. We identify those use cases that can be disrupted with predictive AI, with generative AI. We package the product and the solution into a vertical app, which is highly integrated, highly customized for that particular use case, from an integration standpoint, UI, UX standpoint, etc. And we take that vertical app to market. That's it. So our core proposition is to solve the existing problems that enterprises are facing, but with AI. To give you one example, if I may, in financial services, financial crime detection is an age-old problem.
Yep.
It has been there for the last 20 years. It will be there for the next 20 years.
Yep.
Cyber crime space is going to be there with us, for forever, right? Unfortunately. What we are doing at SymphonyAI is that we have almost 200+ banks who are our customers, where we have a complete suite of financial crime detection software, which basically has the traditional rule-based detection, but it also we complement that traditional rule-based detection with AI-based detection. And so we build our own AI ML models to detect crime better, and we have proven over and over again to our customers that we can detect more crime and do better detection. But we don't only stop there. We then combine generative AI to our products with copilots, with ChatGPT type, ChatGPT-like interface, which basically a prompt-based interface that allows further productivity improvement for all the investigators and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So I think you made a really good point about AI, right? AI has been around forever. They've even tried to solve this with many different AI techniques before. The first type of AI that was widely kind of adopted, both by enterprises and ISVs, was rule-based AI. Then we went to predictive AI, which is essentially predictive analytics. Was kind of the main use case, and now we're talking about Gen AI. So let's talk about those different eras, because I think it's important that customers understand, what era we're living in now, but where we've come from, right? A lot of customers have been sold on AI. There's certain industries that have been using AI in different places, like financial services have been using AI for a lot, of manufacturing have been using AI for a lot. But that was all rule-based or predictive, right? But many of those industries used it in very kind of narrow use cases, right? Like for financial crime and fraud is a great example, right? So let's talk about rule-based, and then let's talk about predictive, and let's talk about Gen AI. And we don't have to get into the technology, but let's talk about, why rule-based AI didn't solve the problem and why predictive analytics and AI came up, and then Gen AI. Let's talk about kind of that progression and what you've seen in this industry now, because you've been in the middle of it now across every industry for 8 years, but you've been around a lot longer than that. So I'd love to hear your perspective, because I think that's what customers want to know. This is evolutionarily, but we're living in a new world with Gen AI. So why don't you tee up the Gen AI piece, and then we can talk about Gen AI.
Sure. I think the way sort of the things have evolved is, I think, almost, 10 years back, last 5 or 10 years ago, we all sort of understood the power of bringing all the data together and trying to learn from that data.
Yeah.
And, this whole notion of sort of, business intelligence, BI, and analytics sort of evolved with it. There were many companies started, many sort of products created, etc. And majority of the use cases that were solved was that basically the data came together in some manner, and analytics tools were basically sort of trying to look at the data and tell the enterprise customers, looking backwards, what happened. Okay.
Yeah.
So, that clearly has, it can give good insights about, about an enterprise use case to the people who are sort of, running the enterprises and so on. But really what customers wanted were more than just looking backwards as to what happened. They want to know why it happened.
Yep.
And more importantly, to basically model use cases on what will happen if we do this or if we do that, right? So typically that's sort of, what the decision making happens in the enterprises. I want to, change the pricing of this product like this, and, what will happen to, in this regions against that competitor, against that product category. And so this is a constant sort of, decision making that, every enterprise is, go through every single day. So what predictive AI is doing is basically not only just telling you what happened in the past, which is what I call BI analytics, business intelligence and analytics, but it's also now sort of, with predictive AI capabilities, with AI ML models, we're able to tell why it happened, and also, allow the customers to do what if scenarios, for the future, do future predictions, right? The generative AI piece, sort of is further interesting, because now, you can combine not only sort of the what if scenarios, but create sort of, a co-pilot sort of, attachment to your products, which, you can, use natural language to ask, basically, bunch of questions, to this data, and do all kinds of sort of, predictions and analysis that was not really possible in the past. So that's sort of, how, predictive and generative AI is being combined together. we call it copilots, right? That's what the term that industry has standardized on. And the place where it's going is, to use the automotive sort of comparison, is towards autonomous driving.
Mm-hmm.
So today where we are is, we are at that level 2, level 3 autonomous driving, where the driver is still needed to be sitting behind the wheels while the car is sort of doing semi-autonomous sort of driving functions.
Mm-hmm.
But tomorrow, this is going to go towards sort of more autonomous agents, which basically will be will be able to take the predictions are so strong that you can take actions based on those predictions.
Okay.
Basically.
Yeah. So I'll come back to that in a second. The thing I thought was kind of interesting you brought up is I think one of the first things you said was it's all rules based, right? So we as humans had to determine what we were going to look for and tell the AI what to look for. We're now getting to a world where the AI can start to look for problems, identify problems, and then eventually we'll get to a point where they solve the problems. But that's the unique kind of evolution we've made. And so the human in the loop gets to kind of be the co-pilot, right? Not the AI bot, but the human gets to be the co-pilot, and that's kind of what's going to shift, right? And I think you probably see a lot of this in your business. There's a concept called hyperautomation, or we call it enterprise process automation, where you have Gen AI meeting automation, right? And that's where the business process transformation happens, right? It's not about just a co-pilot and querying it and finding some data. It's about actually embedding Gen AI into your business process. And that is the big outcome change. It's not just buying a tool to get a feature and having some type of result from the feature. It's about the process change. So can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the process change you've seen in retail, financial services, manufacturing? What are the ways that you see customers using predictive and Gen AI to actually transform their business, not just use it as a co-pilot for people to query?
Yeah. So I'll start with financial services, then I'll come to retail. So in financial services, for example, I told you our focus is to use predictive and generative AI for financial crime prevention.
Yep.
So we basically look for anti-money laundering, sanctions compliance, payment fraud, those kind of KYC, CDD type of applications.
Yep.
And to the center of our product is a product that we call Investigator Hub. So basically, we use predictive AI to detect crime better. So suddenly the false positives, which in a rule-based system were 70, 80%, 90% of the alerts, and I'm not kidding, that high a number are false positive. So basically, it's useless work that thousands and thousands of people are sitting in each bank doing. We eliminate that with predictive AI, because the alerts that we generate have huge reduction in the false positives. These are real alerts. But then what we do is with our Investigator Hub, we basically automate the workflow of what to do when an alert comes. Typically what a bank needs to do is that when there is a real sort of alert of financial crime, they are supposed to write the narrative of why that alert is a real alert, and create a document called SAR. SAR stands for Suspicious Activity Report. And this SAR document then gets sort of filed with various different agencies and all that stuff, right? Which basically says, okay, why is this transaction fraudulent? Why we should stop it? Why, who are the players? Why do we think we are risk scoring this person, this entity as a fraudulent entity, et cetera, et cetera. So that whole narrative that would take an investigator many hours and days to write is fully automated in our system, in our Investigator Hub, because we use generative AI capabilities, information from all different sources, and we put this whole document together that can be automatically submitted, for example. So that so the workflow of what happens when an alert is generated to the end of that workflow, which is to file a SAR, is gets fully automated with predictive and generative AI capabilities of our product. Right?
So what could they, if we just kind of roll it back to prior to Gen AI,
right?
Could you not do that full workflow?
So what would happen in the prior to predictive and generative AI timeframe is that these alerts will come. A human will sit there and sort of go through thousands of alerts. Majority of them he'll say bogus, 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 bogus.
Yep.
The one that is real, they'll start investigating it as to getting information and writing that SAR document to submit, to take it to the next level of investigation. That whole process is now automated, right, using predictive and generative AI.
Got it. Okay. And then what are some other use cases? Retail or?
Well, retail, another use case there would be, for example, category planners, demand planners. So in a retail store, you have these category planners. Again, lots and lots of people who are basically, going and planning for, what category to buy at what price, setting up sort of, all the, supply and demand, scenarios for the retailers, based on all kinds of different data. Previously this group would basically sort of look backwards that, okay, it's month of June, based on past history, this is what happens in June, and hence maybe I should do the same again this year. What may be different would be that certain drivers may be different. The competition may be different this June as compared to last June. The CPG pricing structures may have changed for that category, now as compared to the past. So all of these sort of key indicators get missed, in the very simpler sort of planning that category planners traditionally would do in the past, right? Using my BI analytics example that I gave earlier, right? Which is sort of looking backwards and analyzing the data. In the new world with predictive and generative AI, basically with our Cindy Gen AI product, we're able to provide a product to our retail customers where the category planners, the demand planners, the store managers, they can all basically understand the state of how various different products are performing, what offers and promotions are working, what they should do different to sort of increase the revenue for the categories that they are responsible for. Real time take decisions on what may be happening on the store and shelf, in a retail store, and what actions they need to take, in a real time. So this is where all the predictive sort of scenarios are coming. And once again, with generative AI, we once again integrate with the rest of the workflows, not only giving them a natural language type of interaction, which is sort of the normal baseline use case with generative AI, but also sort of one of the key things that category planners do is basically do a Monday morning meeting, which is full of a lot of graphs and charts and presentations that they have to present to sort of make their case of what the decisions that they're making for the typical categories that they're responsible for. All that work we automate using generative AI. So with predictive AI, we help them make the case or take the decision. With generative AI, we package all this stuff into sort of consumable charts and graphs and other sort of outputs that they want to sort of present to whosoever else, typically the chief merchant of a retail organization.
Got it. I think what's interesting about the process workflow changes is that it kind of intersects with hyper automation, or again, process automation. It intersects with RPA. But the challenge with some of those other technologies is that they do not enable the human to be creative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those other solutions are really just based on a workflow and following a rules-based workflow.
That's
right?
correct.
Not providing creativity and knowledge to the worker with the context that the worker needs. So I think that's a really, because we cover all those different markets, but I think the challenge that customers have with those other technologies is didn't provide that context, right?
Yeah.
You talk to a lot of different types of customers across different industries. You talk to CEOs, you talk to business leaders. What are some of the pressing challenges you see with companies and how they're trying to address it, Gen AI, with the people problem? Like, there just aren't enough people to do these jobs, right? There aren't enough skilled people to be in strategy roles to build applications to use Gen AI. Like this problem is just getting worse, right? So, a lot of executives say, I'm just going to slap a Gen AI on this and fire a bunch of people. And it's going to solve my problem. But you still don't have the context of the human being who's in the loop, right? If you look at cloud and other ones, like, hey, move to the cloud, you can use those resources for something else. Actually, no, you can't. You actually have to use more resources. You now need a platform engineering team. You have an on-prem team, now you have a platform engineering team. So what are some of the people conversations you're having with executives, and how are the executives trying to adopt this to enable their people, and also enable the business?
I think there are a few sort of challenges that we experience as we sort of take our products to market. Number one is the readiness of a enterprise from a data architecture standpoint. So that is number one issue.
Yeah.
The data in the enterprises are so fragmented, and so on and so forth. So that's number one issue. Clearly, there are products, there are companies who are solving that. So that sort of over time will get solved.
Yeah.
The second issue that we basically see is that there is lack of trust and transparency with AI. I sort of use this as my own example. About 4 or 5 years back, one of the cars that I bought had semi-autonomous capabilities where by pressing a button it'll go and find a parking spot and park. The first few times that I did, it was so hair-raising. I didn't know. I didn't trust the car. I didn't know if it's going to take the right decisions. Today, after using it for 4 or 5 years, I don't even think. I just press the button and I trust the car that it knows what it's doing. We're at the same stage with AI adoption and sort of challenges. So what we do in our products is that we try to build extra explainability and extra transparency in our predictive models so that our customers, if they want to drill down on certain recommendations we are making, certain predictions that we are making, they can go and drill down as to what is the logic behind it. What logic did AI try to come up with? So explainability, transparency, etc. become very important elements to build trust with the products, right? With AI.
Yeah.
And the third point is, around sort of, human adoption and education and so on and so forth, which also still is a challenge, right? Because, we have a certain way of doing things that we enjoy, and obviously sort of, there's a reskilling that'll happen. The industry is calling it co-pilot. It's not calling it autopilot. Although, sometimes in the future there will be certain sort of autonomous functions that I'm sure will come. But in this last weekend, I was in San Francisco with my family, and we used Waymo's autonomous taxi to take us from A to B. Amazing experience, right? But it has taken us 15 years to get there.
Yeah.
And still in a very, very limited fashion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's still the driver experience and the Uber experience continues to sort of evolve further. Same thing with the rest of the enterprises as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think someone asked me the other day, like, what inning are we in? We're like 8-year-olds in Little League. We're not even in the major leagues yet,
That is correct.
To LLMs and Gen AI. I talked to a lot of executives. Everyone is trying to figure out, how do I essentially put Gen AI on whatever I have? That's what everyone is starting with. I think what we're finding is that customers are having a lot of problems with that because, to your point, the transparency and the data piece, a lot of people talk about hallucination. I think the challenge is also everyone doesn't understand how to actually leverage it, right? Like if you look at prompt engineering, it actually takes a technologist to do prompt engineering. Like it's kind of the same thing as AI and data scientists, right? We say, hey, AI is going to change the world. And then we're like, okay, well, only data scientists can do it. Like, so,
right.
Yeah. So how are we going to enable the people? To your point, are we going to do we just embed it in the process? Do we train the people on the process? Do we teach them how to do prompt engineering? What do you kind of see within different industries? Because manufacturing, for example, like they have a huge shortage of people. We work with MXD, which is a not-for-profit organization that is federally funded for helping America stay competitive for manufacturing, helping them transform and modernize, and also help them secure manufacturing. They have a huge shortage of people. They cannot hire people to do these jobs. So, that manufacturing is looking at it from can an AI just solve this problem? And then you have can I kind of embed this in within people? So, the training piece is something that is really becoming a hot topic for everyone right now. What does SymphonyAI do when you go in with a customer? How do you do this and help train people?
See, Ben, in our case, that's core to our strategy, and that's the reason we're sort of creating those vertical apps, because those vertical apps are designed to sort of be absorbed into the workflows of our vertical use cases that we are going after. So no, we're not expecting sort of the category planners now to be data scientists,
right?
Because if we do that, we have not done our job to build the right product. Similarly, the investigators, who are investigating crime, we are not expecting them to now become sort of an experts in predictive and generative AI models and prompts and all that stuff, right? Because once again, that'll defeat the purpose. So our solution I think what you're saying is very real, by the way. And our solution and our core to our strategy is basically identifying these use cases that we want to disrupt with AI. But the way to solve it is by creating a vertically packaged app, which has the right integrations, has the right sort of attachments to automate the workflows, rather than sort of forcing people to learn data science or AI.
Right. So I think the other thing about Gen AI, like with predictive and rule-based, it needs to be very narrow.
Yeah.
Right. The problem needs to be very narrow. And I think what you're saying is we solve industry-specific problems,
which are very narrow.
But it's very narrow, right? And so I think you can kind of take it off the table when it's narrow. When it's more complex, which is kind of the why there's so much focus on LLMs right now, because you need to have a very specific narrow use case with a ton of data to then solve a narrow problem. Then you can move on to the next one. You can't actually combine all of these different things into one model, right? And I think that hasn't changed since rule and predictive AI, right?
Yes.
It's just like that AI is just getting smarter. So. All right, that's great, Sanjay. I think this was great. I think this was great to kind of get your perspective working across industries, how rule-based AI has turned into predictive and turned into Gen AI. What are you excited about next? What are you excited about Gen AI? What are you excited about different industries? Where do you see this going in the next 3 to 5 years? you've seen the evolution of many different technologies. What are you excited about watching and also being a part of here in the next couple of years?
Yeah, we're two things. Number one, for us, which is very exciting, is that today, as we deploy AI into enterprises, all the learnings and the data is sort of limited to the enterprise itself, right? Because this is these are very sensitive sort of enterprise level applications, and enterprises are very sensitive to not sharing that data with anybody else.
Yep.
What that basically means is that the learnings, are the models, as you know, in AI, the more data and the more learning happens, the models become more and more intelligent. So we're working on sort of technologies, AI technologies, where what I call federated learning models, where the data can be localized within an enterprise, but the learnings can be shared across enterprises, right? So that the models become more and more intelligent across, and so on. So that's one interesting work that we are doing that I'm very excited about. The second is what I hinted upon earlier, which is going from the co-pilots to more semi-autonomous autonomous agents, right? So we're very excited about that as well, because that'll bring sort of the next level of productivity improvements that will be quite interesting in the use cases that we go after. So, but again, there is still a lot of work to do. You're absolutely right. We're in a minor, not even in minor or major leagues right now. We're at a very, very early stages of this journey here that the world is experiencing with AI. One of the first things that I worked on, my master's thesis was in computer networking, how to make computers talk to each other. That was my master's thesis, and I was involved in sort of writing the original networking standards. In 1989, I was leading IEEE 802, and we, started writing IEEE 802.11, which became what is Wi-Fi standard. So I was involved in that standardization process many years back, and we built the first Wi-Fi systems in the lab, complete end-to-end system in 1992, and it took 7 years for real adoption and deployment. Until 1999, we could not get the form factor, the pricing of the solution, and also the integration of the solution with all the drivers and operating systems and all that stuff for a seamless sort of wireless application, right? So that whole infrastructure took another 7 years to bring the price down from almost $300 to $100 for it to be fully integrated in the operating system, so that it's seamless experience for the users. And after 1999, there was Wi-Fi, just took off like no tomorrow, right? But it took almost 10 years, right, for Wi-Fi, and that was a direct experience that I personally had. Now, AI is clearly moving faster than that. But remember, OpenAI also got started in 2015, I think, right? So it took them almost 9 years to get to ChatGPT, and where the whole world noticed. I first played with ChatGPT in 2020, I remember. I was leading a different AI company at that time, and I remember asking my team to contact OpenAI and all that stuff, to have some talks with them, et cetera, et cetera. That was in 2020. The world noticed OpenAI in 2023, right? So it takes time, and I think, but the journey is very, very exciting. That's in front of us.
Is it Gen AI is very expensive right now, right? To build a model, to run a model. Do you think we're going to see that decrease over time, because everyone's going to kind of train everything, and then you just got to have kind of the input and adding in more data? And two, do you guys, if you look at it from the industry perspective, is that cheaper at scale to run than looking at it, horizontally? Because you can run a model one time and use it multiple times versus running it once and having to run it once. So do you have any thoughts on that? Like you said, you've been in AI for a long time. You've seen the progression. You've seen rule-based to predictive to Gen AI. Do you think the cost will be going down? I know the opportunity is huge, but do you think it's just going to, be resource intensive for the the foreseeable future?
No, I think the cost is absolutely coming down. There are already 1/10, so 10x impact on training costs that have been sort of already shown by number of companies, right?
Yeah.
I think in our case, training cost is not a big issue, because we are not trying to create foundation models like OpenAI
Right.
or others. We use foundation models like Llama 3 or Azure OpenAI or others.
Yeah.
But because we are very focused on sort of narrow use cases, we use sort of the training of the data for those narrow use cases, and then we use LangChain type of technology to sort of connect the various different LLMs together. So for specific vertical applications, the training costs is not that big of an issue for us. Although I think we all enjoy the fact that the training costs will come more and more down. Right?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's a great way to end it. Thank you, Sanjay, for joining the CEO podcast, and hopefully our audience enjoys this podcast talking about rule-based to predictive to Gen AI. And we'll have to have you come on here in the next year, and we'll talk about where the market's going to go and how we're going to get to autonomous Gen AI. So thanks, Sanjay.
Thank you so much.